Hey everyone, welcome back to KU Sports Extra. Tom Keegan here to my right. I'm Matt Tait, and I'm not going to lie, Tom, it does not get more exciting than this. I think this is officially Season 2.
It is Season 2.
And they said it couldn't be done.
And for me, it's Season 11 for KU football coverage.
Wow, that's exciting.
And I've never been quite this pessimistic going into a...
And that's saying something.
I almost said positive.
Yeah, that freaked me out. Thought you were going to steal the good news and I was going to get stuck with the bad news. We don't like it when that happens. But let's jump right into it. Obviously, KU football season is about underway, and that is definitely the good news. Whether you like the outlook for this team or not, and if you do, I'm a little worried about you. But whether you do or not, it has to be exciting to have college football back. That atmosphere is fantastic. It's supposed to be a great day Saturday. Go enjoy that is how I kind of tell people to approach this first game. Sure, they might be 1-11 or 0-12, but this week they should be fun. It should be a game they can
and
win.
You might see the one.
Yeah, exactly. So don't worry about the rest of that stuff down the road. Just go out there and enjoy this first game, that atmosphere, the tailgating, all that stuff. It's really cool when people are into it and the weather's good and all that. And on top of that, you've been reading about these guys. We've been writing about them forever. A bunch of new faces. It'll at least be fun and good news to get to see them finally.
You're right, and the bad news is that yet again it's a rebuilding year for Kansas football. I mean, it's unavoidable when you change coaches unless the coach leaves a program for a better job, for the NFL or a bigger job. Not the case here. Hasn't been the case here for a while with Kansas football. And David Beaty is inheriting a weaker roster than Charlie Weiss inherited, who was inheriting a weaker roster than Turner Gill inherited.
Agreed.
So it's going in the wrong direction. Beaty and his staff, a good bunch of recruiters. The hope is they reverse that. But as far as this year is concerned, anytime you have a coaching change, they've got to learn the new offense, learn the new terminology. And the players all say this is simple terminology, simple offense. But still, it's a turnover, and the depth isn't good. It was shored up by some late recruits who joined as immediately eligible transfers. But the bad news is Vegas put the over-under at 1.5 games, and that sounds about right. And if Kansas is able to defeat South Dakota State, people who pick the over are feeling good. People who pick the under are not feeling so good, but 1.5 was the correct over-under.
Go figure. Kansas football, both good news and bad news this week. That's special. It takes something special to be able to carry both categories.
Well, not having a game allowed you to have some good news.
That's true.
So we'll see if there's more good news after this game.
All right, let's jump into that first game. It is South Dakota State, and we'll do a little breakdown street action. Not too much to digest here. It's very simple for Kansas. Run the football, get after the quarterback, and limit your mistakes. If you do that, the athletes you have should be able to overcome what South Dakota State's bringing. That's not
and you
to say,
forgot one, stop the run. South Dakota State likes to run
Sure.
it. Probably not as much now that Zach Zenner is running downhill for the Lions instead of for the Jackrabbits.
Great mascot. Great mascot.
Yeah, but if you're an insider, you
if
call
you're
them the
really
Jacks.
hip, yeah, right.
And you call the coach Coach Stig.
Coach Stig and the Jacks coming to town. But Rob Likens, KU's offensive coordinator, brought up a great point. None of these guys, Beaty, Likens, I'm sure the players themselves, none of them think this is going to be easy, and that's the right approach to take for sure. But the thing Likens really emphasized was how tough South Dakota State is. He said they'll bend your face mask. I loved that terminology. I loved how he worded that. But it's right. They are going to come in here expecting to win, expecting to be tougher, more physical. And if this Kansas team that has had a lot of distractions, learning a new system, getting familiar with new coaches, if they're not ready to match toughness for toughness, they lose. Yeah. So
especially if the refs don't give them penalty flags for bending the Jacks penalty flags for bending face masks.
Right.
I think that's a
helmet to helmet contact.
Well, no, it's face masking.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
The Jacks gets me every time. That's good stuff.
But Coach Stig has been there forever, so their system, there's no learning any new terminology or any of that stuff. It's really stability versus instability. It's experience as a head coach versus inexperience. On the plus side for Kansas, it's speed versus FCS lack of speed.
Yeah.
So It's an exciting game.
Yeah.
I like the way it lays out. It should be a competitive game, and it's a hard game to pick.
I love the wording in a recent column of yours. It doesn't take two great teams to have a great game.
Right.
I think that's a perfect way to word this game. It could be a fantastic game, and neither one of these teams is that great. So
Yeah, some of the best boxing bouts to watch are two featherweights you've never heard of.
just throwing 130 punches around, that's the best thing.
That's great stuff.
All right, well, let's move on real quickly to prediction time. And this prediction time segment is brought to you by Checkers, who is sponsoring our football picks contest all year. 16 games every week. If you haven't logged on yet, do that. KUsports.com/football picks. You can compete against us.
Yeah.
You can compete against the guy behind the camera, with the hair, the whiz-bang, Benton Smith.
If you feel like, when you're watching this right now, you feel like just beating us, well, log on to the Checkers Pick Contest, and you can beat us.
Right.
Or not.
KUsports.com/football picks. So we won't give you all 16 of ours. We picked 16 college games this week because there are no NFL games, but there will be a pro and a college segment to that picks contest, 8 and 8. So it's a lot of fun, and you can talk trash with your friends and talk trash with us, and make sure you sign up if you're interested. But right now we'll give you the KU pick just to give you that little tease to go to that Checkers contest. But Tom, prediction time. Jacks or Hawks?
I'm going to go with the Hawks by a point on a field goal as time expires.
You wrote that in your column.
Yeah.
And
I don't get many premonitions in my life, but when I get them, they come through.
Yeah, who kicks it?
Well, that's the suspense, and if it's 35 yards, that's the real suspense, and I can't make that decision. Only one person can. David Beaty.
Head coach David Beaty.
For the first time in 10 years, he can say head coach David Beaty, and he makes that decision. I'm sure they have a gray area because they've got Bartolotta doing the short kicks and Wyman doing the longer kicks. So what if it's 35? Do you go to Bartolotta or do you go to Wyman?
You have to trot Yoda onto the field at that point. For one, he's Yoda. That guy doesn't mess things up.
He's got short strides.
Yeah.
He's 5'6", and this guy has figured out how to be a really accurate kicker. It's a cool story.
It is a cool story, yeah. So it'll be interesting if it comes down to that, maybe 28-27, something like that is what you're thinking. Or are you going 6-5?
Well, 28-27 is kind of weird because if they're winning on a field
31-30. There it is.
Yeah, it's 31-30.
31-30. Good stuff. Good segue. I also have 31 for Kansas. I've got them only giving up 20, though. I think they win this game, and I think it's because this coaching staff won't try to be too perfect, to be too fancy, to do anything special. If you remember the North Dakota State game, and how can you forget the 6-3 debacle in Turner Gill's debut? If you remember that game, you will remember that if they would have handed the ball to Tobin Orpurum on every single play that night,
I think I wrote that.
They would have won.
Yeah, but he was playing defense.
Right. But,
yeah.
that would have been hard. But
But
he was a running back, and they shouldn't have done that.
You don't try to be perfect. No, you try to be perfect, but you got to live with not being perfect. Now, David Beaty, it's an off-the-field thing, and maybe you think it doesn't mean anything, but it's just a function of being totally buttoned up in your new role as head coach. On the Big 12 conference call, each of the coaches has to go at a certain time. They all show up like clockwork.
9:50 it starts with Charlie Strong from Texas. David Beatty's at 10.
Right.
Bob Stoops is at 10:10. It goes on like that.
Now, Bobby Knight, out of pure animus, would not show up sometimes, or show up late, rather. But David Beatty's a good guy. He's not going to do that. He wants to make a good first impression.
Right.
He was 4 or 5 minutes late on his first Big 12 conference call. Did that bother you in terms of just not being buttoned up with the details?
Yeah, you don't want to see that. There's no way. And maybe he had a great excuse. Who knows? But it would still be an excuse because that's your main priority right there. You're representing Kansas. You're representing your program. You're representing yourself. And that's your first chance to do it in front of the entire – well, not your first chance. At Big 12 Media Days in Dallas, he had that chance too. But, there are a lot of guys on that call, a lot of writers that will write things about this program in Kansas. And the last thing Kansas needs to do is give anyone a reason to say, same old Kansas.
Yeah, basketball school and all that garbage that I'm tired of hearing.
Right.
So it's a small thing, but it's an indication that until you go through being a head coach, you're going to make some mistakes along the way. Will he ever be late for that call again? I don't know.
Let's hope
but,
not.
Yeah, but the first time maybe was the hardest time to be on time because it's not a habit yet, and he's got to form a habit.
Right, definitely. All right, that's our picks. 31-20 Kansas, 31-30 Kansas. A barn burner over here, and I think it will be an entertaining game for sure. So check out the rest of our picks and make yours at our Checkers Football Picks Contest. KUsports.com/football picks. Let's move on to a little more specialized part of this game, and give me your primetime pick. Dial in just a little more, not just the final score.
Right.
Who's the best KU player in this game?
Well, DeAndre Mann. I think that both running backs are going to have a good game, and it's a timeshare job, I think, this year with Keon Kinner and DeAndre Mann. Mann rushed for 120 against SEMO last year in the season opener. He wasn't allowed to participate in contact drills throughout the spring. He's very fresh. I believe him when he says his concussions are behind him. You never know, they could resurface. But right now he looks very clear-eyed, clear-headed, and really, really eager to get going and fresh. I like DeAndre Mann to be the primetime player against the Jacks.
I like it. He said he lost 10 to 11 pounds because of this offense. I asked him, did you do that because of the offense or to get in shape for it? He said, that's a good question. It might have been because of all the tempo. It might have been because of all the running. So
they are in shape as a team.
Really good pick. I like DeAndre Mann as a dude, and I like him as a pick for sure. So that'd be good for Kansas if he does well. It would probably lead to a victory. I'm going to go with the guy, the quarterback, and I'm not trying to upset you, but I'm going to go with Telly.
That's good.
Montel
I like that.
Cozart.
I hope it's true.
Yeah, I think he has a really good first game. You guys remember he had a really good first quarter last year in the opener. I think he'll remember that. I think he is a different player, more confident, more mature, probably being the most important thing. And he's a little stronger, a little heavier, maybe can take some hits and that kind of thing, which he knows he needs to do. So I like Montel to have a high completion percentage in this one. I think the short passes in this offense will benefit him. I like him to have a nice rushing yardage total, maybe 80, somewhere around there. And I really like him to factor in somehow, whether it's throwing or running, in 3 touchdowns for Kansas. So Montel Cozart.
The 3 guys we just mentioned, Keon Kinner, who neither of us picked as primetime player, but both think he's going to have a good game. DeAndre Mann, Montel Cozart. That's, on paper at least, more speed than the Jacks should be able to handle. Jackrabbits in the Wild Kingdom are fast, but in football, let's face it, that's the biggest advantage Kansas has here. And it might be the only game all year where we say Kansas is faster than its opponent. I don't know yet. We'll have to see Memphis, Rutgers, maybe Iowa State. But in this game, Kansas has the advantage in speed. And can you figure out where to put the players in space so that you really can cash in on that advantage?
My dad's band was playing in Wyoming when I was a little kid years ago. And he sent me a postcard from Wyoming that had a postcard size and had a giant jackrabbit on it. This jackrabbit was taller than the 3 humans standing on the ground.
And it was a real jackrabbit,
it had
not
to be.
a mascot.
It had to be, yeah. And it had a saddle. They used to ride these things out there in the Wild West.
Wow.
I don't know if it was true, but I believed it. It was on a postcard.
Had too much information, man. That's scary. A jackrabbit that big that they used to ride?
So if those guys are out there still, then Coach Stig has them on the O-line, not in the back.
They do have corn-fed linemen.
Literally.
That's the preferred cliche in college football.
Nebraska.
When you're talking about linemen.
Yep.
Corn-fed. As opposed to what? Soy?
Yeah, good call.
Well, who eats soy when you can eat corn, though? I mean,
I don't know. Valuable crop. Both of them.
I guess so.
All right, let's finish it off, as we always have, with the most obnoxious man in sports. If you don't think we're obnoxious, listen to these guys. Who's your pick?
Nick Saban. I'll tell you why. In the offseason, Nick Saban blamed the loss to Ohio State on his players being distracted because they had opened their mail, and in the mail were their grades from the NFL on how they shape up as draft prospects. And, come on. You're the coach. You're great at getting them to block out distractions. The reason you lost that game is because Ohio State was better. Ohio State was the best team in the country. Ohio State started the year with an inexperienced offensive line coach Ed Warner, elevated them. They had plenty of quarterbacks. One would get hurt, boom, next guy. He gets hurt, boom. They ended up with one of the best pro prospects in the game. So Ohio State was better, Nick. You might be against that rule of mailing that stuff to him. Probably a good point. Probably should wait. But you lost that game.
Yeah, pick a different way to explain it.
Ohio State was better.
I agree. That's what's the word for that?
Obnoxious.
It is obnoxious, definitely. I'm going to stick with football. I'm going to go to the pro level, speaking of pro football. And I'm just going to go with the Washington Redskins organization. This thing's a mess right now. I mean, some would call them in shambles, a la Texas early last year. But it might even be worse than shambles. They've got RG3, the rookie of the year a couple of years ago, one of the most talented college football players of all freaking time. And now he's a joke. Now they can't get him off the field. Yeah. They don't want him on the field. They don't know what to do with him. They bench him in favor of Kirk Cousins, who, by the way, isn't any good either. So, come on. They have the guy on their roster who should be their quarterback, and his name is Colt McCoy. He's the best quarterback of that trio for what the Redskins want to do. It shouldn't be harder than that. Colt McCoy is
Colt
a winner.
McCoy absolutely should have that job.
Yeah.
He's earned it.
Right.
And what does David Beaty do when someone's earned it? He
puts
gives
him on the
job.
field. Simple. Hashtag earn it, Colt. Proud of you. But, yeah, trade RG3. Get him out of here. Let him have a fresh start somewhere else. Maybe that'll help. It would help all of us. I'd love to watch the guy be good.
And that's, since you call them in shambles, I like them to win a lot of games. Last year you said that Kansas would beat Texas because Texas was in shambles. And they were in such shambles that the Longhorns came in here and they shut out Kansas. And the headline was blankety blank.
Yeah.
In our paper, Kirk Gasson wrote that. And Charlie Weiss got fired the next day. I mean, who gets fired at 2-2?
That's a good question.
But he did get fired.
He's wondered that, I bet.
And Clint Bowen turned the team around, and they only got one win, but almost beat TCU. But he's the D coordinator now with a good attitude, and his friend David Beaty's the head coach, and he's got all the pressure on him. David Beaty's the guy who's going to have to decide Nick Bartolotta, a.k.a. Yoda, or Matt Wyman, a.k.a.
Spud.
Gary Hyman personality clone.
They call
Spud.
him Spud, yeah.
Yep.
Yoda or the Wyman? Who done it? Thanks for checking out the debut of Season 2. I can't believe we made it. I wish we had streamers falling from the ceiling right now to celebrate this monumental occasion. Next week we'll be back with more, but thanks for checking out KU Sports Extra. Tom Keegan, I'm Matt Tait, and don't forget to log on and make your picks in the Checkers football contest, KUsports.com/football picks.